I've been thinking a lot about the throughput problem, right? The speed that you can actually communicate with an AI. It's a lot easier to talk than it is to type, right? So there's a couple different pieces of technology that I found. One called AssemblyAI that really tries to harness like the use of voice for different things. I'm curious how much you've actually worked in that space so far, because it's kind of a frontier technology for sure. But AssemblyAI specifically is for translating voice to text, right? Nothing super new there, but also building in the agent component for like phone calls. And I think it's really fascinating to use voice because then you can just pick up the phone, right? And the vast majority of people are not going to be downloading the newest AI app to, engage with AI. They're going to use the mechanisms that they already have, like a phone call. So are you using any of these tools right now? And I'm curious if you've even seen AssemblyAI.
I haven't seen Assembly. We've dabbled with 11 Labs with a couple clients, but a lot of it is still kind of early days, and folks are understandably not keen on just kind of unleashing the hounds on letting their customers or clients or leads interact with voice agents.
Rightfully
On a
so.
personal level, I use WhisperFlow on my computer a ton because, to your point, it's just so much easier to talk than it is to type it all out. And WhisperFlow, there's a million dictation apps, and even the foundational models have their own, processing of audio and transcription. But WhisperFlow, just keyboard shortcut, does it with any app on your computer, wherever the text blinker is sitting, essentially. So I've been using that a ton and encouraging others too, because it does save a lot of time.
There's a couple of those. We actually had somebody on the team who like basically broke his arm, and for the first time, adopted one of these like voice to text apps, and he's like, I'm more efficient now with one arm, typing through things with my voice than previously, having to type everything out. I use one called SuperWhisper. I guess like whisper is the term, right?
Yeah.
But that one allows you to have different profiles that would enrich whatever you say with a prompt, which is interesting, kind of a novelty. I usually just use it as a direct voice to text. I don't need it to change what I'm saying. But I do think that those features, even the native feature on Mac at least, it saves time, and it helps you kind of just generate the content and then edit it, right? It is so much faster. But the thing about AssemblyAI that I was really struck by was the demos that they made available on their site already. So you could have it interact with a customer service person or with a salesperson or whatever. And I think we're going to get into this later, like some of the different departments are better or worse suited for actual voice agents. And I wonder how you've seen companies do this dance, because there's such a desire to implement AI in every possible corner of the business. But we all know that 95% of the time, that's probably not a good idea. According to MIT, at least. That's an article in news that I'm sure crossed everybody's desk this past week. But on the other side, like, what are the ones that are actually applicable, right? That you see the 5% success rates on. I'm curious where your instincts lie with that.
As in which departments?
Yeah, which departments do you think are well, no, not which departments do you think are best suited for voice?
For voice specifically.
Yeah, for voice specifically.
Well, I think there's to your point of the percentage success rate of AI projects, like I think it really comes down to a team's willingness to prepare the right data and the right structure of, prompts, information, access and permissions, et cetera, for the voice agent to use accordingly. So I think if a team, like with that caveat, if a team puts in that work, then customer support is probably by far. But there's all the things to keep in mind of, well, if we're giving a voice agent to clients and they can figure out their account information if they want to update billing address or they need to check a balance or whatever it might be, or get technical support and it knows which services they have, it's, let's say a telco or whatever it might be. The issue there is, how do you verify that person's information in a way that quote unquote AI robot can understand versus a human who, quickly pulls up the screen. Okay, what's your last 4 digits of your driver's license or whatever it might be, and ensure that people can't game that system to figure out information about other people's accounts or whatever it might be. Obviously, there's that potential with humans too, but if that part is done right, the kind of infrastructure of how the permissions and the data flow works to and from the agent, I think customer support is probably an example of one where it's very ready and the use cases are abundant compared to the volume of like voice stuff that they have to do with people.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I guess the, for me, the things that voice has been most applicable towards have been internal use cases. So like translating unstructured thought or even meetings into actual artifacts that are useful, like tasks or project management material, or going from like voice to diagram has been really helpful for our team. Just taking a really unstructured meeting or even a structured meeting and translating that into a business process diagram that have all these different relationships and stuff, like that has been really helpful. Is that necessary to do in like a live builder conversation, conversational AI? Not really, right?
That's AI meeting note takers that you then feed the outputs to something.
There's 100 different ways to do that, right? But I just think the mechanism or the medium of voice as a way of engaging with these tools is really appealing. Back to the MIT story that I'm sure everybody has thoughts on. I'm really curious about your thoughts on, have you seen that, a 95% failure rate? Something tells me that like we wouldn't be in business if that was the case, right? Like, 5% of my clients are successful. Like, come hire us. Like, of course not.
Well, I think the study had a bunch of misnomers in it. One of the biggest ones being if it's an AI kind of only transformation. And I think that is not the case 90% of the time. The AI side is a part of a bigger process change or operational change or digital transformation change. And those projects tend to be successful. I think if you're only doing AI, like an AI specific thing, we see it time and again. I'm sure you do too with your team, of like when you get to the people part where it's someone who has to change how they've worked for 10 years and they ultimately might save 5 hours a week, but that hurdle of them understanding and being willing to change how they work to have AI support them is where things can go wrong, which is why we spend a lot of time up front, like gathering the right requirements, making sure the rollout and communication plan around changes is, well developed and not happening last minute from their leaders to them or whatever it might be. So I think that's a big part of that 5%. But digital transformation as a, call it, cottage industry has been around for over a decade, and the numbers to this day are 60% of them fail to even. It's the same thing. It's the people side that's the challenge, and that's why you have to, as a business, be ready for that undertaking. If it's not just I've got an idea and let's just implement the tech. That part's arguably the easier part. Is the people part that things fall apart.
Yeah, it's so much more kind of about the buy-in and the alignment of the people, right? And if they don't have that buy-in or have that alignment, you're bound to fail from the beginning. I wonder if there's a handful of really obvious data points that you could collect at the beginning of a project and generate some kind of prediction, up from the onset, just based on the data that you've already had. I'm sure there's an AI that could do that, right?
Yeah. But it also comes down to the departments too. Like there's some departments where I think they just lend themselves to so many good AI use cases already, and teams are just excited and they get it. Whereas other departments are either, they think that they're ready and they have an idea, but it's not really that feasible or isn't actually going to be a good return. So that brings us to the story that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
Of our friend, the banana.
Oh, yes. The Nano Banana. The Nano Banana model was released by Google this past week. It's generated a lot of buzz. Apparently, it's a model with appeal. And I think the really special part about this model is a lot of special things. But the first is the consistency in which it can generate variants of a single image, right? Striking.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how well it can transpose a face into being on the top of Everest, being, in a bullfighting ring or whatever. Like, you can take a person and put them in a lot of different circumstances. Fascinating. The other thing is the price. It is so much cheaper. It is a very small model compared to some other image generation tools out there. So not only does it outperform a lot of the other models, especially when it comes to consistency, but it also is cheaper than the other models by a pretty large margin. If I remember the stats correctly, it's like, a fraction of a percent, but like less than 5% to cost to generate another image compared to some of the other models.
Yeah, it's been wild to see the photoshopping abilities of Nano Banana. Like, I think a lot of people think about Midjourney, where it's, nothing exists, I'm giving you a prompt and create an image out of nothing. But Nano Banana excels at, like you said, consistency and whatnot, with people's faces. The fascinating thing has been, so many examples I've seen and have played around with now just to validate it for myself, of like, someone has taken a picture of a J. Crew catalog with an outfit laid out on a table flat, and then taken a picture of themselves in a totally different outfit and said, take this outfit that is, a picture of a bunch of clothes sitting on a table, and add it to the photo of me changing my clothes out. And it nails it. Like, it's just like at an uncanny level where you're like, no, wait, no, oh no, it caught the details on the shoes that were only partially visible. Like, it's just wild how good the, call it, Photoshop abilities are, which is, I think, a big breakthrough for use cases, essentially, for image generators. And they're kind of this, not a niche, because it's still a huge and growing area that everyone's figuring out, but I'll call it, for lack of a better word, this niche of like purpose-driven models. So GPT-5 or, Claude's 4.0 or 4.1, those are very general purpose giant models. To your point, this is a smaller model because it's built around this very specific purpose of essentially image editing, the equivalent of, having a Photoshop guru at your side all the times, which is fascinating to see this kind of niching down of some of the models, because you can plug them into different workflows.
So I guess the real question is, Justin, when are you going to, sponsor the World Series, or, right? you can now put your logo, right, anywhere you want, which comes with its own handful of problems. But it's fascinating because there are clearly thousands of agencies around the world that do this photoshopping, replacement, product placement thing. And now there's a model that can do it. The question is, should you do it yourself now? Should you stop hiring the agency to do this? Probably not. But you can encourage the agency that you're hiring to use this to keep your costs down. I think there's a real appeal for most organizations to try to do it themselves, because AI is so easy, right? And I'm sure, you've seen the demos and you've done it yourself inside of Nano Banana. But I think there's experience gap where you have somebody who's doing it all day. They know the quirks, they know the right way to do it, or they can do it just 10 times more effectively or efficiently, compared to, oh, I'm just gonna roll my sleeves up and generate all my own marketing material now, and let's get rid of the marketing department. Department specific use cases for AI, I think, is the next topic of debate. But just from your perspective, what does this really change how companies should approach marketing, or who they should hire, or how they would expect to engage with agencies? I'm curious your take.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about this stuff, again, in the way you and I have talked about AI. Like, there's personal AI, like an AI meeting note taker, or your own personal use of, you're throwing 5 PDFs into ChatGPT and saying, analyze this and give me a summary. Those are very personal use of AI. Whereas there's the team-wide AI workflows. There's marketing is a great example of Nano Banana. Of a lot of teams will have something like, if they're a certain size, they'll have a process like anyone in the company can submit a form requesting a marketing asset that goes into some sort of task or project management tool for the marketing team to triage, build out, call it requirements or a brief on whatever assets or marketing campaign or whatever it might be that's being asked for. Then that gets split off into, well, are we creating video assets? Are we creating image assets? Are we creating content and copy assets? And so all of those different parts of, call it the pipeline of what marketing teams do, Nano Banana sits in that pipeline for, oh, we need image assets, or we have image assets and we need them applied to a billboard on the LA freeway or something. That part is where a lot of teams have gone, well, we're not really using AI for marketing because the images look like AI slop and that we don't want that to be our brand, which I get and I often agree with, which is why I don't push too hard for teams to go all in on marketing automation, because it's content that goes out into the world that people can smell it a mile away. Whereas Nano Banana changes that. You can't really tell a lot of times. And so if you're thinking about this as kind of game changer for team-wide workflows of AI, Nano Banana is a good example of like fitting as a model into part of your overall marketing department's processes, if that makes sense.
No, I'm with you. I think that tactic of being very intentional and fitting into the existing workflows is one that most departments could really, really benefit from. Which leads me to my next topic. What are your top 2 departments that are the best departments to automate and use AI in, or the top 2 or the bottom 2 departments to automate in and use AI? Curious where your head's at with that.
So of all the departments in your, call it average company, what are the 2 that have the most or the best AI use cases, and which 2 have arguably the worst?
Yeah, because every organization is structured a little differently, right? Some people have an IT team, some people have a legal team, some people have a product team, design team. Not everyone is going to have the same, but I think we'd be safe if we pick 2, right? 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom for your AI use cases today, right? Tomorrow has a different promise. And there's just a lot of different departments that we could go through. We're not going to go through each one, but what are your top 2 today?
Top 2, bottom 2 would be, so top 2 would probably be customer support, for some of the reasons that we just discussed, of like there's a lot of, call it tribal knowledge that's in people's heads around how a company works, how their product or service works, questions that they get from external sources. And so long story short, because of so much of customer support being, well, if I can have access to the data about, let's say it's customers, if I can have access to that and a knowledge base that's built out, AI is extremely good and ready for, and I mean, we're seeing it firsthand, because it's ready for scanning all those things and giving, frontline folks way more than they had before, or cutting out the need for that customer to go to the frontline folks to be able to have things summarized or be able to interact with this, call it new era of chatbots. There's, chatbots have been around for a long time and they rub people the wrong way because they were largely terrible, because they didn't have LLMs and the technology that we have now. So I would say customer support is a really high up one. And the other top would be, call it service delivery, as in,
really,
I think that's so much of any company's special sauce is their service delivery of something, whether this is a agency or consulting firm that's delivering on projects, or a financial firm that's, audits is their service delivery, or tax season, or, cleaning and construction and whatnot. Like essentially any company that has their main service is offering some sort of job or project that has a start and end date. That cycle within there's so many pieces that are usually very manually done, because things like CRMs, there's a million of. So sales often has stuff out of the box. Designers are so, custom in Figma and whatnot, that there's not really a process for magically creating designs every time. It's a repeatable thing, though, to have service delivery of some sort. And I think we've seen it firsthand that there's a lot of potential there. It usually takes a bit more effort because you have to unpack the secret sauce and how do we automate parts of it? Where does AI make sense to fit in? But there's so much usually tribal knowledge and process that's informal, that once you formalize it a bit and get the tribal knowledge out of people's heads, plugging AI and automation into it becomes great. So that's my top 2. Bottom 2, maybe I'll let you do your top 2. I'm curious here.
Yeah. fascinating. So I want to put a finer point on customer success because, or CX support. I actually agree with you that it's a top department to have AI involved in, but I want to reposition it. Instead of being directly customer facing, I want it to be customer support person empowering.
Mm-hmm.
So help that human find the right answer and navigate the right thing, but still have the human interact with the human. I think we're going to see this divide in a lot of organizations where there are organizations that try to do AI to human interaction, and that's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And there's going to be, a Fortune 1000 blow up story of someone doing the wrong thing, right? Or some AI doing the wrong thing and it causing a huge problem. So I think a better tactic would be to maintain that human to human relationship, but empower the human in CX to be AI enabled and to just be smarter as a CX support person. So that's the finer point on that department. I think the way that you're describing service delivery, I would probably recategorize as operations. So the operations of an organization, so like the way you do project management, the way you generate key assets that may or may not actually be customer facing, but the internal gears that let the people do the work that they need to do, that operations department, I think, is a huge opportunity for AI enablement and, just wiring systems together and like the whole concept of MCPs. And like there's a lot of things inside of operations that I think is like ready for prime time. My bottom two, this is where I actually really disagree with you, is like I would put service delivery in the bottom, because I think if you're being paid to do a service and you're delivering something that is either intentionally, unintentionally so AI generated, I think it devalues the service enormously if you are not appropriately setting expectations there. I just think the risk is too high if you are, charging a white glove service or 5 figures or whatever for a service, and it ends up being, some giant prompt behind the scenes that generates a thing that you then hand over a client. I think that could really rub somebody the wrong way. So yeah, that I just think it's more dangerous, and something I would put in the bottom for now.
Interesting. Yeah. Whereas I think about it as, most service delivery, it kind of goes back to your customer support. I think of service delivery as AI empowers people to do their job way better or way faster.
Yeah.
The quality that comes out of it should still be managed or audited or done by humans. The final output might be done, but any company with a service delivery of from when a sales team sells whatever that professional service is or thing that requires service delivery to when it's delivered, there's usually at a certain company size, call it 50 plus people, there is often dozens of people involved in these different processes. And a lot of it is rekeying the same thing into 5 programs and summarizing it for 2 people and then distilling something down into findings and whatever that might be. It's those various steps. It's death by 1,000 cuts across service delivery. And those are the things that it's ready for. But I agree, if it's, if you're an advertising firm producing assets, or if you're a auditor doing, and I'll get to my bottom 2 in a second where this is going, I think if you're an auditor doing something with financial services analysis, then like I would not have it do that all for you, but certain cleanup or communication or distilling down of things, there's just a ton of time to be saved usually in service delivery, because that tends to be the secret sauce, or what people think is a secret sauce, but is largely just a bunch of humans who have all this knowledge in their head of, okay, I do this and then I do that, but if that person is out for a week, everything falls apart.
So what's that on your bottom? Yeah. What's on the bottom of yours?
So it's funny because the top of my bottom 2 is marketing, and 2 weeks ago I would have put it at the bottom, but things like Nano Banana, like I often chat with folks who are like, oh, we want to automate our marketing. I'm like, what parts?
Yeah.
Because if their answer is, well, our ad assets or our blog, and it's like, have you looked at companies that have automated with AI their blog posts? Well, yeah, And I'm like, how do you know that they have? Well, you can tell. And I'm like, exactly. Like there's same with LinkedIn comments, same with, it's the dead internet theory. There's so much slop and people can spot it with M dashes and overly forced professional grammar in written content. They can see that it's a mid-journey image, not an actual photograph.
Yeah.
Things like that. So I think marketing, again, as a service delivery function of like the different steps that you have to do, AI can certainly help. But I would put marketing towards the bottom of, like, at the end of the day, marketing tends to produce creative assets of some sort, and AI is not there yet and making it feel really genuine. And there's tools that help with it, and there's certain parts that maybe you can try, but I don't recommend it. So that's the top of my bottom two. My truly bottom one that I never really encourage much AI in. I encourage a lot of automation in because that's extremely helpful there. But AI in deep in the weeds financials. So, if you're an investor throwing sims at it and, loan summaries and you're just looking for high level information, great. If you are some sort of financial services company that has one Excel spreadsheet that you're doing analysis on, great, go for it. That part, it's there. But most teams at a certain size, their financials are dozens of spreadsheets that are updated manually, pulled from 6 different tools with no APIs into one CSV. They have all these special formulas that calculate a bunch of stuff. They just have all these kind of inputs from various sources that a lot of time need to be cleaned in a very specific way and then merged in a very specific way and then analyzed a very specific way.
Yeah.
And finance, it is the accuracy of, analysis, aka hallucinations, is just not there yet. If you, again, like we've had a client before where they want an analysis of a kind of single set of inputs and outputs that are always structured the same way, that is in a single spreadsheet. And that worked really well because it's there for that kind of stuff. But a finance team with, CFO and a team of 6 people, and their month end is done by clobbering together dozens of different data points and cleaned up and formulas all over the place. That part is still very human, and I just wouldn't even suggest trying right now.
The farthest I'd go, I'm with you with finance being at the bottom of the barrel. The farthest I would go is like categorization of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Right. Or scanning AIs to scan invoices. Like we've done a couple times now where, accounts receivable team gets 50 invoices a week. And
PDFs that are just,
Yeah, that stuff is great. Essentially, if you have one page of financial information, you're in a good place with AI.
Yeah.
Beyond that,
but don't hand over your NetSuite to an AI and say, make budgets for next year.
Yeah, like, what is my revenue forecast versus capacity, and think about all the factors, and no.
Expectations for finance, lower them. The other areas that we talked about, maybe you can give it a challenge or two, but finance, I think is a pretty clear, back of the bus for these types of things. It's not going to be the first thing you should work on.
So your top 2 is operations and customer support.
Yeah, in bottom 2.
Sorry,
go ahead.
And my top 2 were customer support and service delivery, which you kind of consider operations and service delivery.
Yeah,
joint that way. And then bottom 2 for me is marketing and finance, and for you it's service delivery and finance.
Yeah, and to, again, the service delivery component, I think the thread that we're both touching on is like the AI should be an enabler for the people inside of the company and not a customer or, an externally facing thing, whether it's marketing or CX or whatever. It has to be internally enabling and amplifying the people that are like actually interfacing with other humans on the outside. I think that pattern is going to be a hugely important pattern for successful companies that are actually implementing AI. It's not, screw ups don't happen externally. They happen in an internal meeting, and they're like, wow, can you believe what this thing hallucinated? Okay, retry.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and there's also that big difference too between personal AI and team AI. Like, I think that's why marketing is moving up the list with something like image editing and call it photoshopping being such a common use case, whether it's in Photoshop or people using Canva or Figma or Illustrator. CapCut, like just all these different tools that people use to edit video and photo. But Nano Banana is a great example of, as a team with all your workflows, image editing and asset generation is just part of that. And so Nano Banana now kind of levels up everyone for the marketing side of things. So it's too thinking about, well, not every aspect of a department is ready for AI, but certainly parts are. And as we saw in the last week with Nano Banana, I still can't believe that's the name. I feel sick every time I say it. But in the last week, like, that advancement is, I think there's so many AI snake oil people who say everything's a game changer, but being Nano Banana is a game changer for marketing teams.
It literally went from, this is impossible to generate multiple images that are identical or variants of something identical.
And look real.
Yeah, and look real. 2 weeks ago, it went from impossible to today it's trivial. And there really aren't that many moments. I guess there are every like 2 weeks or something, but this is a really clear example. Well, Justin, I gotta jump. I've got a couple more things to ship this week, as I'm sure you do too. This was a pleasure. I guess I'll see you next week.
Yeah, ciao. Chat soon.
See ya.